Everybody, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 2. Today we have my good friend, best pal, Jacqueline, in the background. Let's put this phone into low power mode, shall we? Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about accidental reading. Okay, this is a theory, okay? Pretend that I'm a literary scholar for a moment. I, have been thinking of this theory for a while, and it's kind of something that if I was a literary scholar, I would write a paper on, like a landmark essay on my new concept of accidental reading. And then for generations to come, people would be talking about the theory of accidental reading. So, I had this idea. So basically this video is just going to be me telling you my theory of accidental reading, a term I've completely invented myself and doesn't exist, but we're going to pretend it's legit. So I had this theory when I was working on my poetry documentary, because in that documentary, one of the things I explore is how much people are reading poetry, and how that's really surprising, because for a very long time, poetry has fallen from grace, but it hasn't fallen from grace, it's just fallen out of popularity. But one of the shocking, weird, amazing things about Instagram poetry is that people are reading it. And that it's not only some people reading it, it's literally millions of people reading it. When I made that documentary, 2.8 million people were following Rupi Kaur. Let's find out how many people follow her now. 3.2 million people follow her on Instagram. So literally millions of people are reading poetry. And another interesting statistic that I recently found was that people under 30 read more than people over 30. And that's fascinating to me. That's something I need to look more into and try and see if the study that figured out that statistic knows why they do. They might not. But the reason that really, it honestly did not surprise me, but the reason that it interested me was because I feel like we've always had this narrative that young people don't read, especially young people are always on their phones and blah, blah, blah. And so one of these things I've been thinking a lot about is that I think that a lot of people read more than they used to, but in new ways that we don't yet consider reading. So I think our definition of reading is very limited. And I think that an easy example of proof of that is that whenever someone reads an audiobook, not whenever, but very often when someone reads an audiobook, they don't feel like that counted as reading. I get so many messages during the Booktubeathon or during other events or other times of people just saying does it count if I listen to an audiobook? And it's of course that counts. Of course that's reading a book. Or I'll ask someone what are you reading right now? And they're well, I'm not reading it, I'm listening to it. And obviously part of that is just to let me know that they're listening to an audiobook and how that experience is going. But it seems to quantify whether they are looking to let me know, I know that doesn't fully count as reading. That's not as valid as reading words on a page. So I feel like we have a very stringent and narrow definition of what reading is. Therefore, I think that there's all these new types and forms and concepts of what reading could be that we don't yet understand as reading or accept as reading or are thinking about as reading. And so that's where my theory of accidental reading comes into play. It's a working definition, as in I haven't actually defined it yet. It's just something I've been thinking a lot about in my brain. But accidental reading is, very simply, reading literature by accident, not on purpose. Now, I make a few distinctions here. Literature, it has to be that, because I don't mean you're just scrolling on Twitter and you accidentally read a news story, or you end up reading a news story you didn't mean to read, or a random article you didn't mean to read, or a funny tweet or post. That's not accidental reading, because you are on a social media platform and that is the purpose of it. If you're scrolling through Instagram and you're seeing captions, that's what you're supposed to be reading. Accidental reading is when you encounter writing that is meant to be art. So a poem or a short story or a novel or whatever. I think it'd be hard to accidentally read a novel, but there you go. So you accidentally encounter this reading. So it's literature. It has to be some form of an art. That is what the accidental reading, that's what you accidentally read. And it's accidental because you are in a space that you did not visit or go to intending to read art. So the classic and easy example of this is Instagram poetry. You do not go onto Instagram to read poetry, right? That's not the intended purpose of Instagram. That's probably not your intended purpose for visiting Instagram. It's a photograph website or a social media app. So if you're on Instagram and you're scrolling and you suddenly come upon a poem and you stop and you read it, that is an example, an instance, a moment of accidental reading. And I think that is increasingly happening. Interesting, like, poems or quotations or novels, whatever, on Twitter or in different spaces on social media. And I need to think of them. I think they must exist in other places too. Maybe, like, if you're reading because sometimes, like, a magazine will have like some writing competition or something, and it will be like a magazine about cars. So you go to that magazine to learn about cars because you love cars or something, and so you're reading about cars, and then suddenly there's a poem page and they had a writing contest for some reason that month, and so you suddenly read some poems and then you keep going. I think that would definitely be an example of accidental reading. So I don't think that it's exclusive to social media. I just think that it happens often on social media, and that's where I first noticed it. So that's my theory on accidental reading. The second portion of it is like, what are the repercussions of it? I think one of the reasons that it interests me and maybe could interest other people is because it changes the context of what you're reading. If you are intentional in reading, therefore the literal opposite of accidentally reading, if you're intentional, you are deciding, choosing, consenting to enter into a reading space and a reading's like a mindset. So you're deciding, I want to read right now. I'm going to think about reading right now. And I'm sitting down with this book and I'm going to give it my attention, and I'm deciding to take it seriously as art. If you're just scrolling on Instagram and you see a poem, it's like a surprising type of reading. And it means that, like, your mind wasn't ready for it. And so I'm very curious then what your reaction to it is. It's in such a different context. And it might mean something completely different than if you had been intentionally reading. Yeah. So this is a working theory. This is just something that's been on my mind for the past few weeks. And like I said, I really want to, like, think about it more and maybe possibly, like, write a paper, write some more concrete definitions of what the heck I'm talking about here. But I thought it'd be fun to share this theory with you. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. And if you can think of any other examples of maybe when you have accidentally read something. You know, a good example might be advertising. So maybe you're, like, driving down a highway and you see a billboard and it has a poem on it for some reason, and you're suddenly faced with a literary art when you didn't mean to. You didn't consent or choose to go into reading. All right, that is Vlogmas Day 2. I'm going to post this on the Discord chat. So let's have a conversation about all of this over there, because I think that this is an interesting theory, and it would be really cool to see you guys all talking about it, and, like, chime in myself. All right, thank you very much. Goodbye!